What's good, YouTube? We got a video from the dog Lonk's Takes. Never watched him yet. We're gonna see if he produces good content, and we're gonna figure out if we want to subscribe. As always, we're gonna hit that like button. You know what I'm saying? Show some support. And as always, check the link down below for my socials. This was all filmed live on Twitch. If you look in the bottom right corner, that's actually the YouTube chat. We now stream live on YouTube and Twitch. So tap in whenever you're free. Without further ado, though, we're just gonna get straight into it. The versus battle wiki situation is crazy.
The versus Battle Wiki situation is crazy. So recently, there was a big debate on Twitter over Bakugo from My Hero
I've heard about
Academia
this.
versus Reize from Chainsaw Man. This spawned a whole bunch of memes, animations, and fan art with people showing their own
animation
agendas
talent.
between who would win between the two explosion users. One meme that stood out from the rest was this picture depicting
Tanjiro?
Marco from One Piece asking Tanjiro to go
What the
handle
fuck?
Reize. This is peak slander, showing that a character generally considered weak by the general versus battle community like Tanjiro is considered to be 7B, while Reize is even weaker than that at 8C. But a lot of you may be asking, 8C?
I think it's all. I do know the tiering system, kinda, but we're gonna let it like fly. So pretty informative factors, but also yeah, like I don't like that concept. I'll let him get it off.
What do those numbers and letters mean? Is it like class 1A for My Hero Academia? Obviously no. These numbers are known as the tiering system values on the website known as the Versus Battle Wiki. I've talked about this website before, but it acts as a massive database to contain all the power scaling information on many different characters as possible. You have everything from Star Wars to Crazy Frog on there, and each profile contains the background information on the characters, their abilities, and most importantly, info on how strong they are. In order to make things more streamlined and uniform across all profiles, Versus Battle Wiki enacted a system of sorts to keep track of how strong characters are.
Using like the tiering system, I like the format is kind of set up how if you ever looked at what's it called, like the fan-ins and like the other wikis, it's the same exact format.
Using numbers and letters. At the very bottom, you have tier 11 characters. These characters are ones that are not just weaker than a normal person within their story, but infinitesimally weaker than a person, often literally being two-dimensional in nature. On the other end, you have tier 0 characters. Simply put, these are the strongest characters in fiction, quite literally unbounded by any concept of limitations multiple times over. These characters are in effect truly omnipotent. Then every other tier is everything in between those two massive extremes. While the numbers represent large tiers, the letters are then used to divide them up into subcategories. So for example, tier 6 contains 6A, 6B, and 6C, which is continent, country, and island level respectively. So finally, looking back to that Tanjiro meme, this meme reintroduced the scaling system to the general anime community and where Versus Battle Wiki has subjectively placed some characters. This led to the birth of the According to Versus Battle Wiki meme that has taken over TikTok and Twitter in the past couple of days. It takes two characters, one of which is usually unexpectedly powerful, and puts them up against a character
Gary's tuned for it, so I give him that too.
Strong by the Versus Battle Wiki, showing what an epic fight between them would look like according to the Versus Battle Wiki. We've seen fights of Homer Simpson versus Muzan, Buford versus Sukuna, and Goku versus a hamster. But are these memes actually correct?
But this is the thing. Sometimes, yes, because like the tiering system, but also even within tiers, there are like differences. And that's what people don't take into mind. Like say, for example, hacks and stuff. Like if there's a guy in a tier with just like, let's say, they're of similar tiers, so they're relative to each other. And his main joint is he's just like physically strong and fast. The other guy is just as fast, but he's more durable and has more stamina. Even though they are relative, the guy with the stamina who is more durable, because his hits can still hurt, even though lesser than the other guy, because he has the stamina and the durability, he would win that fight. Or if like one of them had regen, like when you get into hacks, those things matter too. So even amongst tiers, there's certain like, you know, things that can change a battle. You know, those things are like important, and that's what I'm be saying about like power scaling. That's why I don't indulge in it too much, because the idea that like, oh, because this character can do this, they now like go so high in scale, getting rid of context and getting rid of consistency, it's just like laughable, to be quite frank.
Are these fights actually as
Michael
close,
Myers
or
is
is
crazy.
there massive amounts of missing context? Today, we're going to break down some of the funniest of these versus Battle Wiki memes to see if they actually hold up. If you like this kind of stuff, make sure to like and subscribe, and
Yeah,
let's
Goku
jump
got
right
clones
in.
and shit.
So let's begin with one that is definitely not correct, and that one is Tanjiro, Denji, and Yuji versus the...
This don't even make sense because 3 people are in the same tier. They're low-key probably, unless hacks are, you know what I'm saying, involved, washing a singular person in that tier.
Deep from the boys. As funny as it is to imagine that the biggest loser of the 7 can take on some of Shonen's most recent popular protagonists, these stats are simply not accurate. While yes, the Deep is probably like building level, all 3 of the anime MCs have long surpassed that tier, and it even says so on their profiles.
Yeah.
At this point in all of these stories, these guys are like town level to city level power at worst, and could probably solo the boys verse with low difficulty, especially when Homelander's most consistent scaling only potentially puts him at city level. Another meme that once again misinterprets values puts Gojo up against the Fire Wizard from Clash Royale, saying in fact the wizard is even more powerful than the strongest Jujutsu sorcerer. But again, this one has some major mistakes. Firstly, Gojo's tier as shown is actually higher than the wizard. 8A is actually higher than 8B, so this fight wouldn't be close anyways.
Too.
Regardless, this isn't Gojo's actual strength, as at worst he's more like town to city level. Through some arguments put him far higher. Regardless, nowhere on Versus Battle Wiki is it implying that the Clash of Clans guy is capable of rivaling Gojo in power, as funny as that would be. On the subject of Jujutsu Kaisen, the Buford versus Sukuna meme might be one of the funniest for one simple reason. Buford doesn't even have a profile on the Versus Battle Wiki right now. That's right, the stats in this meme are completely made up entirely for slander purposes, and that's hilarious. Now, the Phineas and Ferb show does have a profile on the Versus Battle Wiki, and the funny thing is, most of their inventions are easily strong enough to defeat Sukuna in a fight. Saying he would fight evenly with the cast of the show is being extremely nice to the King of Curses. For example, just one time, Phineas and Ferb made a robot that could envelop the entire galaxy with a force field in mere seconds. While they usually don't make weapons, the moment Phineas and Ferb get tasked with taking down Sukuna, it would be one of the easiest things in the world for them, as they could make inventions stronger than what Sukuna could possibly be able to comprehend. Now, let's talk about Homer versus Muzan.
Come on. Go Simone.
Because this one is especially funny. It's pretty easily understandable why Muzan would be city level, and I've talked about before in other videos, like when I made him fight Michael Jackson. But the main issue here is Homer. No way he's that strong, right? Well, ignoring the Family Guy crossover when he literally got nuclear superpowers, Homer actually has shown one consistent ability, and that is that he can be extremely loud. In one episode, Homer lets out a doe that is so loud it literally cracks the earth apart, causes a shockwave, and earthquakes across Springfield. That, when calculated, comes out to about city level in power. Does that mean he can actually fight Muzan? No. This is why context matters, of the tiering matters. No one is claiming that Homer is going around,
especially when it comes to things like, oh, if they're like destructibility, their ability to destroy something is here. It doesn't always equate to like, can they tank it? Even if that's the case, if it's like, oh, I have this sword that can, like, I don't know, blow up a block, but I can't fight at all. It's like, you get what I'm saying? Context of that matters of who they are. And that's why, personally, like, I don't get too deep into like the Demon Slayer power scaling, because like, when it comes to feats, a lot of times people take context out in this barbecue chicken feats. Not to mention, like, people ignore stats, because in Demon Slayer, powers don't actually exist. It's just someone exerting some level of physical strength or some ability that is iridescent or similar to this other thing, right? So for me, what got me is the agenda of Tengen being like the weakest Hashira, when the author has confirmed he is number, I think, 3 in strength, number 2 in strength, number 2 in strength, and number 1 in speed. that alone is like stats wise. Okay, that's amongst the Hashira. That would at minimum put him like top 4 to 6 minimum. So to go, oh yeah, bro, he's the lowest one. That doesn't make sense to me. Not to mention if you take into effect context of the fact that it has hand-to-hand weapons, he has poison, he has the ability to essentially like a low precognition ability with musical score. He wields 2 blades. There's a lot of things that would give him advantage. He has explosives. There's a lot of things that give him advantage against someone of similar strength. And because these are not boundless creatures and they're of the same degree, the same tier, those things actually do matter.
Punching harder than a nuclear bomb. It's just that in some situations, he can cause that level of destruction. It's also not taking into account speed. Sukuna is obviously faster than the yellow guy from Fortnite. Another really popular meme that once again takes away massive context is this Dipper versus Invincible meme, in which Dipper apparently massively stomps the half-Viltrumite superhero billions of times over with universal power. If you think for a second, this obviously isn't true. The reason why Dipper is considered universal at all on the wiki is that in one choose-your-own-adventure story that isn't even in the show, Dipper gets a gun that can cause the universe to collapse in on itself when he uses it. So yes, in this one singular story, Dipper temporarily has a weapon that, if it hit Invincible, would be capable of killing him and everyone else in the Invincible universe. However, in no other situation, which is standard fight conditions, is Dipper actually capable of doing this. 99.99999% of the time, Invincible is just blitzing and one-shotting, which should have been obvious. Now, I think the single most hilarious example of someone missing context, and I think just not knowing how the wiki works, is one that put Hulk up against Joshu from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, saying they are both 9B. While that's probably accurate for Joshu and his stand Nut King call, the stats for Hulk aren't even Hulk's stats. They're the values for Bruce Banner, the normal human scientist.
Let's say having Hulk that low, knowing what he can do, is insane.
And even then, it gets values higher than 9B. Hulk, in fact, is at worst multiversal and is realistically outerversal in power, and would literally solo all of JoJo's Bizarre Adventures with a single punch. Yes, even Gold Experience Requiem. Finally, we get to the thumbnail and the reason I made this video. Goku versus random Kirby side characters. Now, there have been multiple memes of this. Goku versus both Rick and Gooey from Kirby have been turned into one of these meme fights. And unlike the others we've been going through up until now, this one is kind of just correct. Sometimes we need to look past the silliness of the situation and admit that a character is just really strong. The Kirby universe is actually a sprawling multiverse of interconnected alternate dimensions and universes.
Yeah, facts. Kirby skills are mad high.
Have threatened to destroy or even cause the collapse of all of these universes, with Kirby obviously stopping them and scaling.
No, I'm not even too deep into the Kirby games. I literally only ever played one, if I'm not mistaken.
Similarly to them. Now, in subsequent adventures, characters like Rick can just fight alongside Kirby against even
that's the game I played.
Threats, therefore making him low multiversal just like Kirby is, and just like Goku is. Now, being honest, scaling-wise, Rick would actually be even further into that multiversal tier than Goku, as the Kirby cosmology probably has more universes in it than Dragon Ball, but I'm not an expert, so I'm fine just calling them equals to each other in power, just as the meme describes. So, why did I make this video? Well, almost every single time there's a power scaling meme, once again, people come out of the woodwork to say that this shows or proves that power scaling sucks and doesn't make sense, and that power scalers don't know what they're talking about. As a power scaling channel, I feel like it's important to say no. Power scaling does make sense a lot of the time. It's just a lot of people get swayed by hype moments, aura, and character designs. They see a matchup and go, no way this silly looking guy is stronger than this super strong guy that I personally like. Power scaling must be stupid.
Has to
For
be
once, the issue is not
unbiased.
with Battle Wiki, although it has many other problems. The issue is that people can't read or genuinely believe memes without actually fact-checking them. Of course, I could keep going through the dozens and dozens of these hilarious
I've never
memes,
seen these in my life.
It boils
I think it's because I'm just not I don't be on that side of the internet.
down to either 1, yes, the meme is correct and the character is that strong. 2, no, the meme is wrong and they aren't displaying the correct value. Or 3, no, the tiering of the character is extremely contextual if you actually read the page, or the versus battle wiki just got it wrong. These memes are just for fun, but I simply can't let it slide when they start being used to
like personally for I'm gonna let him finish before I bring it up.
Justify taking an anti-power scaling stance. If you made it this far, thank you.
Because personally, I'm not too into power scaling, but I'll give him a sub. Just I'm saying, just because tight tech. But in the context of like Simon from Gurren Lagann, at the end of the story, it's essentially explained that he is kind of boundless. He states that people that died he could bring back, but bringing them back would defeat their sacrifice. So I'm not going to do that, because in doing that, he'd follow a loop of like power, pretty much, where he's like doing the same thing that people that came before him did, and that is not healthy. And then he will become like essentially a tyrant for power. And the whole premise of the show is people with spiral power, which everyone has, if you are like essentially dedicated enough, if you have a ceiling, you're gonna break it. So if he hoards that power, he just becomes that ceiling that's gonna be broken, right? And in his fight with the anti-spiral, he essentially absorbs all versions of himself, which one of them in the manga, if I'm not mistaken, is stated to be a creator of the story. So he essentially has plot armor, so to speak, within the context of his show, because he absorbed a version of him that created it. Not to mention, spiral power was shown by Lord Genome to be able to be used without the mech. So you could argue he don't have this if he can't get in the mech. No, he does. You know, not to mention they show feats of like probability manipulation, technically existence erasure, you know, the regeneration, all types of stuff, right? And then you get to a fight with the anti-spiral, which is literally, the anti-spiral is people who have spiral power who like lock themselves up and like fuse together basically, and their home world is hidden between the like 10th and 11th dimension, which could be argued to say that he's 11th dimension or higher, the anti-spiral, because he created a pocket dimension between those two spaces. But just as a human, conceptually, you see how you can just ball up a piece of paper because it's 2D? Even though if you were on that sheet of paper, it is infinite, to you as a 3D being, it is finite. Even if you had the biggest piece of paper that stretched the entire length of the universe, it would never be as big as the universe, because the universe is also infinitely expanding in multiple dimensions. And then you take, you know, what is conceptually understood as the fourth dimension, which is time. So we're fourth dimensional beings, right? Air quote. Us as humans outside of these stories, this is someone that is multiple layers past that, right? So it gets to a point where it's like, dang, well, if this thing is infinity times bigger than this thing that's already infinity times bigger than this thing, and you essentially follow that loop, it gets to it boundless, right? But that's why in some instances power scaling is pointless. Why are you power scaling this that can, I don't know, blow up the sun with this that plants flowers every 2 days? You know, and we get to the boundless tier, it's like, it's pointless. I mean, I know people do it for fun, like, oh, this character could be this character, cool. But it does get to a point. And that's why I'm not too deep in the power scaling community, because you get there and like everywhere else, there's good and there's bad. But I feel like the good and the bad are such like huge ends, and the middle ground is so small that I'm not in there for real. But if you enjoyed this video, you know what I'm saying, and you want to see more videos from Nox Takes, I'm saying, make sure you subscribe. Comment down below your favorite anime character or TV character or cartoon character, someone who would be on the Verse Battle Wiki. And as always, make sure you stay happy, healthy, and hydrated, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.